All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. So if you notice over here is where all of our Zoom participants are. So this sort of transportable Zoom is unmuted now, and they can see all of us and get to be participating in the competition virtually. So welcome, thanks so much for coming. My name is Molly McCann, and I am the graduate assistant for the graduate school office. We're really excited to share this event with all of you and appreciate you spending your evening with us. Just a couple housekeeping items. So this event is being recorded so that we can share it with the broader graduate school community for those who aren't able to join us tonight. For those of you joining us virtually, we invite you to partake with your camera on, but please ask that you keep yourself muted to prevent any distractions. And then for those of you here in person with us, you may have noticed some of the refreshments in the back of the room. So we appreciate you waiting until after the presentations are given, and then we can all enjoy a lovely reception together at the end. And now, without further ado, I'd like to invite John Carroll's 26th president, Dr. Al Nikiak, to give our welcome.
All right, thanks, Molly.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I have to say hi to you. All right. Go this way. Oh, there I am. All right, so it's exciting. 3MT season 3, right? And how far have we gone? Carroll, do you know? Have we gone to the nationals or anything?
I don't know.
This could be the year.
Yeah,
This could be the year. Oh, I see our competitors. See our competitors in-house, right? All right. This is the biology students. All right. TRS.
Genome.
All right. Terrific. All right. Well, Rebecca asked me to come in and kick it off. And first thing I want to say is, how important graduate education is at John Carroll, right? So we're largely spent a lot of time talking about our undergraduate education. There's thousands of students running around, but some of the things that really differentiate our school really are the graduate programs that we have, right? And really the excellence in academics, right, that come through JCU. And so we, congratulate all of you for the work you're doing, particularly on a night like this, right? Because it's both sort of internal and also taking, the opportunity to, take the talent of John Carroll and show it to the world, okay? On the Zoom, it's available everywhere. I want to thank Bonnie for coming out, and Lisa, and Dr. Simmons, and we have Dr. Moore over here. These are some tough judges, right? Look at Walter. Did you get your 10 paddle?
That's right.
10. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So look, for graduate programs, we're coming off of 2 years of COVID and difficulties, building, community, right? And my language must be present to win. Okay. So anybody that wants some pickles and cheese, right? You've got to be present to get that, right? So that's part of that. Right? So just it's evidence of my theory is correct, right? Must be present to win. But, it's all about building community. And so we thank everybody for making the effort to do that. Really for our competitors, our participants tonight, this idea of original research, right? So another thing you'll hear me talk about is we have more money than we have great ideas, right? And research and original thought is all about great ideas. And the better your ideas, the more resources you will attract, right? And so Carroll spends days and hours every day trying to find resources for great ideas for our faculty and graduate students, right? So attracting research grants and other philanthropic, contributors to, advancing the mission. So never give up on the great ideas. It's also really about experiential ed in many ways, right? The kind of learning you can do when you're pursuing these types of extra, effort activities, right? It really makes a big difference, and what you'll be able to share with your peers tonight, will make a difference for them too. So even in 3 minutes, I think somehow it's probably, as they say, right? It's harder to write a one-page paper than a 10-page. Unless the one-page paper is really bad. So, and then, the idea of doing meaningful work. I hope, that what you've taken on is something meaningful for you. And this, is in the language of, personal formation. I think John Carroll is always, looking to, invest in the development of the individual, right? And helping students find their vocation, but, this idea of purposeful work, purposeful research, purposeful learning that we do here. So, and then the final, word, obviously, take this beyond JCU. So we'll look forward to some exciting, presentations, and hopefully you can advance and take the great work and reputation of John Carroll further afield. Okay. So with that, again, I'll thank everyone for coming out tonight, and turn it back to Molly. Great.
Thanks so much, Dr. McGeoch. Really happy that you could be here for our ever-growing 3-minute thesis competition. Excited too to have our past winner here with us, past participants with us. So yeah, with that, I know we're still waiting on one of our judges, but I'll start by giving a little overview of the 3MT and see if he slips in here. So to provide you all with an overview, the 3-minute thesis is an exercise that provides students with the opportunity to present a compelling oration on their thesis and its significance within 3 minutes or less. So 3MT challenges students to consolidate their ideas and research discoveries so they can be presented concisely to a non-specialist audience. So, perfect timing. I was about to start introducing our judges. I'll just advance our slide. So judging our competition, we have 4 phenomenal faculty members with their roles spanning across the university. Our judges include Dr. Stephen Herbert, the Provost and Academic Vice President, Dr. Bonnie Gunzenhauser, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Lisa Schoaf, Associate Dean of the School of Professional Studies, and Dr. Walter Simmons, the Assistant Dean of the Bowler College of Business. So our judges will score presenters on a scale of 1 to 10 in 3 categories: comprehension, engagement, and communication. Points from those 3 categories will be tallied for each presenter's total score. In addition to our competition winner, as determined by our panel of judges, an additional winner will be decided based on feedback from all of you, our audience here with us, and on Zoom with us. So this will be the Peer Choice Award. Each of you will vote for a Peer Choice Award winner based on which presenter you think gave the most convincing 3MT presentation. All right, so now that we've gotten a good idea of our competition basics in judging, I'm now pleased to introduce our 3 graduate student presenters. A brief bio will be shared on each presenter later on, but before their bio will be shared before their presentation. But first, we'd like to recognize each presenter now. So feel free to give a wave when your name is called. Becca Reithoff, Emily Stauffer, and then Susan Russell, who's on Zoom with us. Hi, Susan. All right. So without further ado, we'll now begin our 3-minute thesis, essay, and project competition. We'll provide an introduction to each presenter and their topic, and then after each is introduced, they'll begin their presentation. Presentations will begin in the following order: Becca, followed by Emily, and then Susan bringing up the rear as our virtual presenter. So presenters, your 3-minute timer will begin once you start speaking. Here's also a last reminder to our Zoom audience members to keep themselves muted just to prevent any distractions during the presentations. I also invite each of you to use the speaker view on your Zoom screen so that you can see each presenter right next to their slide. Any questions before we get started? All right. So I'll do the first slides now. Fix the timer. Yeah. All right. So first up, we have Becca Reithoff. Becca, yeah, feel free to come on up. And I would say if you want to stand like right around here, then you can be sort of visible to everyone here. Becca is from South Amherst, Ohio, and is a graduate student in the biology program. And she'll be presenting on her thesis, glucosinolate accumulation in response to water availability in wild and mustard species. So Becca will say it a lot more eloquently than I just did. And Becca, whenever you're ready, I'll advance your slide. Sorry.
Okay, so I do research in plant biology, and primarily I'm focused on plants that grow on gypsum soils. So gypsum soils occur wide in arid and semi-arid regions, and they're kind of funky soils because they have a lot of calcium sulfate dihydrate in them. And while both calcium and sulfur are essential for plant growth, having too much of these elements can actually become toxic to the plants growing in this condition. So you can kind of see what a typical gypsum environment would look like here. The vegetation is pretty small and sparse. And so having a lot of these elements in the soil combined with the fact that they only occur in dry areas can kind of pose a suite of challenges for the plants growing in these environments. And so it kind of leads to this hypothesis that plants growing in these environments must have some kind of specialized mechanism to allow them to survive in these conditions. And one of the proposed mechanisms is the production of these things called glucosinolates. So glucosinolates are these sulfur-containing compounds found in members of the Brassicaceae, also known as the mustard family. And some common mustards you've probably heard of are broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage. But for my thesis, I'm going to be focusing on two members of the Brassicaceae that do grow on gypsum, Lepidium subulatum and Alyssum simplex. And so if you've ever been chopping broccoli and you kind of notice that there's a funky smell to it, that's actually due to glucosinolates being broken down. And so for my thesis, I received a bunch of plant tissue samples from this field experiment in Madrid, Spain. And this field experiment consists of plots experiencing drought due to these rainout shelters, as you can see here, as well as control plots that are unaltered. And I've been extracting and quantifying how many glucosinolates are in these tissue samples to see if there's a link between glucosinolate accumulation and drought stress. Additionally, they collected seeds from Alyssum simplex in the field, and I'm going to be growing those in just a few weeks here in the greenhouse. And I'm going to grow them under drought and control conditions, and then analyze those glucosinolate concentrations as well. And that will complement my field data set. And lastly, this work's really important for conservation purposes because these ecosystems really do hold a great amount of biodiversity, and they can be really vulnerable to climate change. So knowing some of the mechanisms that these plants use to survive on these soils can really give us some insight into how to manage them better in the future. Any questions?
I have 17 seconds left, so.
Thanks so much, Becca. All right, so next up we have Emily Stoffer. Emily, feel free to come on.
Molly, take a couple minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Before we get started, can we minimize that screen?
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, grab that way. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll give the judges like a couple minutes here to go through. Thanks, Emily. And Natalia, how many people do we have joining us virtually?
Right now, we have 6 participants joining us virtually.
Nice. Yeah, I know last competition we had people from like 6 or 7 different states in the US. So we had a lot of different engagement kind of across the country, which is exciting. Let's see, it looks like we have a row of grad students here, right? Are you guys all biology students here? Okay, nice. What about the background?
I'm an undergraduate bio.
Oh, great. Okay, awesome.
I'm in research compliance, so I help researchers follow regulations like taking care of toxic toads. So.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Carroll.
I'm also in the graduate program.
Oh, great.
Biology.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, biology representing strong tonight. Judges, feel ready to?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right, so next up we have Emily. Feel free to join me up here, Emily. Yeah, say hello to our Zoom participants. So Emily is from Broadview Heights, Ohio, and she is a graduate student in the biology program. And Emily will be discussing her thesis, Toxic Toads, Characterizing Chemical Defenses in Understudied Poison Frogs. So yeah, and it looks like our Zoom participants can see you there, and I'll get your slide up now. Right, whenever you're ready.
If I were to ask you which of the frogs on this slide is a poison frog, I'm guessing most of you would probably pick this one at the left. Maybe some of you would choose the one all the way to the right. And you're correct, these are both definitely poison frogs. However, that term poison frog doesn't just encompass one or two different species. It actually encompasses nearly 200 species of frogs across 5 different families. Poison frogs all rely on their diet of ants and mites in order to obtain their chemical defenses called alkaloids, which they store in specialized glands in their skin. Hundreds of alkaloids have been identified, but most of these are just very bitter tasting. Some of them can actually be really toxic though. The 2 best studied families of poison frogs by far are the 2 that are pointed out up here, the dendrobatids to the left and the mantellids all the way to the right. From these 2 families, we know a whole lot about alkaloids in poison frogs, particularly how they vary within and among populations. But today I want to talk to you about a 3rd group of poison frogs, the one where this warty lime green toad comes from. In the buffonid family, there's dozens of genera, but only one of them is considered a poison frog. And that genus is called Melanophreniskis, and they've been largely underrepresented in poison frog research. In fact, out of the 31 species of Melanophreniskis, only 8 have ever had their alkaloids characterized. That means only 29% of all buffonid poison frogs have been studied, compared to the 57% of dendrobatids and the 81% of mantellids. Therefore, the goal of my research was to increase what we know about this understudied genus of poison frog, particularly as it relates to variation in alkaloid composition within and among species. In order to do this, I ran chemical analyses on 59 individual toad skins representing 11 different species in Melanophreniskis, 8 of which have never been studied before. And from this, what I found was that all 11 of my species had alkaloids within them. Not only this, but there was variation in the number, type, and amount of alkaloid across all species. Even within a single species, individuals from different populations had different alkaloid profiles. Overall, my research really contributed and confirmed that the alkaloid composition variation within buffonid poison frogs is similar to what is known from these better studied families. And I was able to increase the percentage of Melanophreniskis that have had their alkaloids identified from 29% to 55%, nearly the same as the dendrobatids. By characterizing chemical defenses in an understudied poison frog, we gain greater insight into how these weird and wonderful toads interact with their environment, predators, prey, and each other. Thank you.
Any questions for Emily?
Yeah. Do these toads live in the same areas of the world that dendrobatids and the other toxic frogs live?
Yeah.
And do they eat the same ants and termites and?
It's a little bit of a multifaceted one. So bufonids are all from Brazil,
Okay.
or South America, but a lot are in Brazil. And we have some overlap with those and the dendrobatids that are from Central America all the way down through South America. The mantelids are actually only on the island of Madagascar. That's the only place that they come from. But they all have a diet of ants, mites, sometimes beetles and things like that. That's one of the big commonalities across poison frogs. Yeah.
We'll give our judges some time to do some scoring while we get our virtual setup ready for Susan. Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. Judges ready for our next presenter? Okay, great. All right. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
All right, so I'll introduce you and we can hear your sound loud and clear in here. So we should be good to go with our audio, and then I'll advance to your slide and then you can start once that's up. So now we're on to our last presenter tonight, Susan Russell, who is obviously presenting with us virtually here. Susan is from Medina, Ohio, and is a graduate student in the Theology and Religious Studies program. Susan will be presenting her essay, Women in the Early Church.
When you think of disciples, do you only think of men? I'm getting quite a bit of feedback. Are you?
No.
We click.
Okay. Can I start over?
Oh yeah, of course. Let me try muting this. Maybe it's kind of echoing over to you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm muting it now, and then let me know if that still doesn't help.
Testing. When you think of disciples, do you only think of men? I chose to explore the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16, verses 1-8. The women disciples discover the empty tomb due to my interest in feminist theology. The Gospel of Mark's story, the women disciples discover the empty tomb, shows how Jesus and Mark portrayed women as leaders in the early church. The abrupt ending of this gospel provided the dramatic effect needed in the days of the early church to inspire others to the urgency of sharing the good news of Jesus' resurrection. These women at the empty tomb, Mary Magdalene, Mary, mother of Jesus and James, Salome, and others, were part of Jesus' inner circle of disciples throughout his ministry, crucifixion, death, and burial. They remained with him when the male disciples betrayed him, denied him, and fled for safety. Early gospels were proclaimed orally for their followers. I can imagine being one of the early audience members and identifying very strongly with the awe and wonder that these women felt as they gazed upon the empty tomb. There are many examples in the Gospel of Mark describing the depth of discipleship of women during Jesus' public life, death, and resurrection. Mark noted in chapter 15 that these women followed Jesus and provided for him in Galilee. The Greek term for follow, ekoluthime, used in Mark 15:41, is the same term Mark used in addressing Andrew, Simon, and Levi. The Greek term for provided, diakonon, is probably more accurately translated as ministered to or served. Mark included the names of several women disciples of Jesus and demonstrated their commitment to following Jesus, even amid fear for their own lives and safety. While the male disciples were in hiding, the women remained at the cross, followed Joseph of Arimathea to the tomb, and went back to anoint Jesus on the third day. Mary, Jesus' mother, Mary Magdalene, and Salome were part of Jesus' inner circle and were the first to share the good news of his resurrection. So the next time you think of disciples, remember that women were part of that circle too. Thank you.
We were applauding in here, but you probably didn't hear it because we were.
Well, thank you.
And any questions for Susan? All right. Thanks so much, Susan.
Sure.
Natalia, should I change?
I,
Oh, perfect.
here we go. Oh, you need to switch the screen back.
Yeah. Yeah, you might know better than I would.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay, great. So great job to all of our presenters. This definitely won't be easy for all of our judges. So now the judges will leave the room to get to deliberate. I'll give you guys all a couple more minutes so to make any notes. And you will be headed to room E227, which is just a nearby classroom.
I'm sorry, Molly, what room?
E227. I remember when I booked it, it was close by. I just don't remember if it was close by that way or this way. Okay, thank you. So just down there. It's like the whatever. Yeah, as a counseling student, I'm always in the admin building, so I'm really not well versed. Yeah, that's how a lot of counseling students are like, are there classrooms in there? Like they have no idea, so it's funny. Great, thanks judges. And then while our judges are deliberating, voting will be taking place in here for the Peer Choice Award winner. So we'll have a slide up here to reference. Here's just a reminder of each presenter in their presentation title. So your job as the audience is to choose the presenter who you think gave the most compelling argument for their thesis. So for those of you on Zoom, a poll will be launching on your screen to cast your vote for the Peer Choice Award winner. Ooh. Come on, yeah, let me.
Oh.
Don't look good. Cover your eyes. It's never not. Is it gone? Oh. Okay. There we go.
Oh, there's George.
Hi, George.
Bye, George.
Okay. So sorry about that. And
Molly,
then
I assume I'm not eligible to vote, correct?
question, Susan.
We could vote last year.
Yeah, I want to say thank you, Kelsey. Last year, there wasn't a way sort of for us to prevent the presenters from voting. So we'll say again this year, the presenters are allowed to vote. So yeah, good question, Susan, and thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that. And then for those of you in person, we have paper ballots, so I will pass those out now.
This is sponsored by the University of Queensland.
Oh, what's the next round?
The next one.
Darn it, that's maybe
So much more fun. Thank you.
So we just.
Just split your slice, I won't judge it.
Did you want to get to vote? Well, thank you for.
So did I, because I didn't know either of them.
And then once you're done, I can just sort of anonymously be collected. Or if people, I'll just put it up here so that way people can kind of bring it up on their own.
I kind of want this.
Right? Up to you guys, if you want to keep the pen, feel free, if you don't, you know, put it in your. Yeah, no, that's great, you're grad students, yeah. Right, I use it for
It'll even out. Either way.
Can we grab snacks while we wait, or should we wait longer?
So you're gonna do a little discussion to ask the presenters about their experiences, but then we'll do first, if that's. Sorry to keep you waiting.
It was like the hockey hour at UT, right? Or Utah, it was this year, Utah.
Do we have all in-person votes? Yes, okay. And then, last call then for, any of our Zoom participants to submit your response to the poll. And then Natalia will be closing that in about a minute here if you haven't gotten to submit your, vote yet.
These really specific.
And then while our judges are deliberating, we'd love to kind of just have a discussion with our two presenters here and then Susan with you as well, to hear about your experience and kind of what you learned or any takeaways from the presentation. Don't worry, this doesn't count towards your voting or anything like that. But we'd love to hear if you experienced any personal growth from participating in the competition or if anything surprised you. Feel free, if you'd rather answer the next question, was it easy or challenging to summarize your topic in 3 minutes? And how are you able to convey that importance in such a short time frame? Or if there were any mistakes that you learned along the way. So feel free, you can kind of mull on that, and anyone who feels compelled to give a response to any or all of the questions, we'd love to hear about your experiences.
We answered, we did it last year.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I don't know. Chime in, I guess. I thought it was really challenging to summarize my topic in 3 minutes, because I'm a biology student, I also study frogs, like Emily, and I was trying to figure out how to make it accessible and understandable. I thought that was challenging in 3 minutes, and I also thought that mistakes that I probably learned were that instead of trying to give all the details, to like just generalize more, which I think can be hard to do. It's a concise thing, it's hard to get, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like that contributes to that idea of like accessibility too. Like you want to make it easy to understand, but I'm sure too, for you, it's like, well, I can't leave out these really important things that contribute to the science behind it all, so it's a hard balance.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about earlier saying that like, you want to present exactly accurate information, and in science there's always like, well, I found this, but also there's exceptions. So you want to include all of that to be like totally accurate, but to do that to summarize.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah, definitely with this research and speaking to my thesis in particular, the data that I have is a huge collection. Like it's a giant set. It spans 10 years of work across so many other researchers. There's aspects of it that weren't even vaguely touched on in 3 minutes just because you can. And so much of it was seeing these, like trying to figure out how to get this story about these frogs that like I've come to just like know so well and so deeply, and decide, well, which part of this is the most important aspect of this story, and which are the things that you kind of have to be okay with casting aside and saying, we'll talk about those at a later date. That's for the 40-minute thesis defense. But it was so challenging to try to decide what part of that would be the most compelling story to tell in the briefest amount of time.
Yeah, because it's a good point about sort of the difference between telling the story and providing all of the information, and how you can strike that balance and still keep it true to the sort of root of your thesis research and everything you've been working for, so.
It's a good skill to have though. I mean, like the elevator pitch to be like,
Science communication is so important these days.
Yeah.
yeah, distilling it down into, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also hard because you guys are like involved in this every day of your lives pretty much. And so I think it can be hard to like, you want to give all the background that you've learned over the course of like the last 2 years, and like how do you pull yourself out of like all that in-depth knowledge that you've accumulated over the time span of your time.
So true.
To boil down to the like 9 hours a day, 6 days a week that I spent here all summer doing data collection into just the 2 words of chemical analyses was like
It
a
hurts.
little heartbreaking, but also kind of a relief. It's like, oh good, I get to just kind of let this go.
Yeah. You have to explain every single one in detail.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. How many of you will be defending your theses this semester? Okay, so yeah, good practice, but like you were saying, it's such a difference between 3 minutes or 40.
Susan actually has a comment.
Oh, great.
Raise her hand.
Yeah, Susan, feel free. I'll mute us just so you don't get any feedback.
I was just going to respond to your question. I think it always is a growth experience to participate in something like this. And it was fun to hear the other contestants' presentations as well. And I agree, it is hard to summarize your topic in 3 minutes. I kept cutting, and then I wanted to make sure I didn't cut it too much, because sometimes when I'm nervous, I talk a little fast. Yeah, I think it was a great learning experience. So thank you.
I have a question for
Yeah.
Susan.
Yeah. Susan, we have a question for you.
Susan, when you, in your study for your essay, were you focusing more on, or entirely on, the historical aspect of you know, the history of the women who followed Jesus, or did you look more, or also to like cultural, like the women in art, in folklore, in literature, just like the more cultural, mythological stories about the women, or were you focused more on the history?
Well, I actually did this research last semester. It isn't yet my essay, but it will be if I can continue in that path. And basically, I was looking for the interpretation of the pericope about the resurrection. Mostly, I was looking at how many women were really involved in this, because my pericope was women disciples discover the empty tomb. And so often we don't hear anything about women in the Bible. So it was really a blessing to hear that there were women who were very devoted followers of Christ. And it's about time they started getting more recognition.
Thanks, Susan. And yeah, thanks to all of you for providing thoughts on your experience. And for those of you who won't be graduating yet, you can definitely participate in our competition next year. Becca, I know you'll be graduating this summer, so you'll miss us for next year. But yeah,
I did it twice.
yeah, you did it twice. Yeah, you're our longest participant so far, so you get that record. All right. Any other questions or any other thoughts from any of the presenters? All right. So with that, I'll turn things over to Dr. Herbert to announce our competition winner.
Where's our camera? Camera's over here, right?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you to all of our participants. The time and effort and energy that this is well represented by your presentation, so thank you so much. We were joking, we had 8 presenters last year, we have 3 this year. We didn't have food last year. So, we have a little bit shorter timeline, so just look for small benefits, but it was tough. We spent a good time talking about it. Positives and negatives for each of you. In the end, we settled on Emily. Sorry. Second business.
Thank you so much.
Both for participating. It was wonderful to listen to your research and give your presentations.
And now Natalia will be coming up to announce the Peer Choice Award winner.
All right, so I'm not one for many words, so I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. The winner for the Peer Choice Award is Emily.
Congrats, Emily. So it sounds like our audience agreed with our judges there, and kind of following suit from Kelsey when you participated too. So great, and with that, we'll have a closing if.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I forgot what I was doing the
No, we're making you move too much.
Yeah, stand up, sit down. Stand
Yeah.
So congratulations to all of our presenters on an excellent job. My name is Natalia McKnight, and I am the Graduate Student Experience Advisor in the Graduate Office. We want to thank you all for joining us for the Graduate School's second annual 3-minute thesis competition, and whether you're here in person or tuning in from home. Thank you to our wonderful presenters for sharing their research with us and increasing our own knowledge and curiosity. Another big thanks goes out to our faculty judges who provided their perspectives tonight. For those of you who are here with us in person, we invite you to enjoy the refreshments in the room for an informal reception concluding tonight's competition. Thank you again and have a great night.
Thanks to our Zoom participants. Have a great night.
Was it Emily that won for both?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Susan.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, hi, Terrence. It's great to see you.
Hello.